we'll switch to this. So you should be seeing now. Thanks, Ryan Johnson. Ryan says that all the panelists are so cool. So today our topic is career development. We usually are talking about software development, but today we're going to talk about developing our careers. So with that, we are going to meet our 4 panelists. And there's an alphabetical order by last name. So we'll start with Shane. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I've been working in software development for over 20 years. It's hard to say exactly how many once you get past that point in your lifetime. Started always worked with computers, but started more with computers directly and got into software development and have worked through from just being as green and junior as possible to being kind of a little bit in architect and mid-level management now. And said there's one thing I've come to appreciate with software development is no matter how good what you're doing, there's always a better way to do it. So constantly learning for what is the next better way. And that's all I got.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the next one.
I think we're having some video issues. I don't know if I'm still frozen, but now I'm seeing Shane frozen. So can y'all hear me? We're having some issues here. Okay. Floyd's going to be next. Hopefully we can all see and hear each other. But we're definitely having some issues here. So Floyd, can you take it away with your intro?
Sure. So I'm actually an independent software development consultant. I've been in the software industry for 20 years. I've held architect roles, management roles, that sort of thing. I'm also an author for Pluralsight, if you know that company, and just in general, just sort of a technology entrepreneur. I've kind of had I would say maybe a less traditional software dev career, and I definitely echo what Shane said about always looking for better ways, and also very excited to be able to give back to the Techlahoma community as a part of this panel.
All right, thanks so much, Floyd. I'm hearing that everybody's seeing and hearing everything just fine. So it may just be my connection, unfortunately, that is not ideal right now. But Mandi, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yes, I've been in the software development IT for about, over 20 years. Shane said it's kind of hard to keep up after you hit that milestone. I didn't start out as a pure software developer. I actually was called a systems analyst, and I did a little bit of everything. The all the way from PC server support to developing, and I realized that developing is where my heart lied. So I took a job, and now I am a software developer full time. I'm always loving to learn new languages, and as the previous two have said, any way to do things better and more efficient.
Awesome, thank you. And I've turned my video off. I hope that helps with the issue of being frozen. So Jeff, tell us about yourself.
I'm up. Okay. Well, as it says, my name is Jeff Yenzer, certified senior professional of human resources. I've been a human resources employee or leader for about the last 20 years. That makes me feel old, but I also am one of the co-owners of Starspace 46. So anytime anyone needs any space to work out of, by all means, here in OKC, visit us. We have free co-working Wednesdays, and now with vaccines rolling out, it's almost a redundancy on all of our plastic screens and social distancing desks, but we're going to go ahead and keep them anyway. So I came into human resources in a very natural way, just going into personnel management, did that throughout high school and college, and kept it going throughout my adult life. So I started a fractionalized company in 2015 and have in that time just kind of grown to a place where I help my clients scale purposefully. So they're calling me when they're hiring their first person or converting their first 1099 contractor. And then those employees are calling me when they need representation or advocacy, so that there's this objective person in the room, because I always kind of felt that in-house HR is completely broken fundamentally. So I try to put the fun back in fundamentals.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. I think my network is a little slow today, so if I do totally cut out, maybe someone else would like to volunteer to moderate. But hopefully, y'all are at least hearing me okay, even though you're not seeing me, and I hope you'll be able to see the slides. So we have a few sections of questions today for the panelists. The first one is going to be on advice for junior developers, and on a lot of these questions, we could talk for an hour about these topics. So and feel free to use the raise hand button if you have some advice here for new developers who are wanting to get into .NET development. Floyd.
My first bit of advice is get comfortable with the command line and get comfortable with the .NET tools that are available on the command line. Not only is this going to make you really productive when you start doing things like build and deployment automation, but it also helps you build up this skill set that allows you to transition away from .NET into like the JavaScript world or Python or Ruby or something like that, where most of those tool chains are going to be very command line oriented. It's really easy in the Microsoft and .NET world to sort of get addicted to the GUI. Resist that temptation.
Shay, what do you have?
I would also just recommend, especially if you're just trying to get into it, is come up with a pet project. Come up with something. It's one thing to go through tutorials, but you can only learn so much. But when you actually build something that you're interested in, work through the different problems that you run into with something like that, you'll learn so much more. And then you can easily, or not easily, but then you can transition that into experience that you've now gained in .NET or any other tool, really.
Great points. What about you, Jeff?
I'm probably going to harp on this a bit throughout the call, but work on that networking and work on your soft skills. At the end of the day, when you are going into any career, you are going to have to sell yourself. And I know that sounds weird coming from an HR person, but you're going to have to sell your own abilities, what you can do, what you can't do. So learn those and also begin to build that network so that you become the person that people come looking for instead of constantly trying to chase that dragon.
Mandi, what can you add?
Well, I just say don't worry about messing things up. Like when you take on that pet project, push all the buttons, try all the new things, Google everything, and see what works and what you can grasp. And don't get pigeonholed into, hey, I made it work, and now I'm going to move on to something else, because just because it works, it may not be the most efficient. So don't be afraid to try new things.
And Floyd, if you have something else?
Yes. One of the other things, and this is kind of in connection to something that Jeff had said, look for mentors and make it clear that you're looking for people that are more experienced than you to sort of help you recognize where your own skills are, if you've got gaps. Mentors within the company that you're in are great. Mentors outside of the company that you're in are even better, because they can be a little bit more independent and they can give you more probably less biased advice on like where to go and what to do. Mentorship's a huge deal for me because at 20 years in, I look back and I'm like, gosh, if I had a mentor, I could have dodged some of the dumbest mistakes that I made in software development. If I just had somebody that could have just spoken into my life, spoken into my career, and been like, hey, this thing that you're thinking about doing, that's probably a bad idea. You shouldn't do that. And here's why.
Yeah, this is all such great advice. I keep nodding my head and remembering that my camera's off and you're not seeing me do that. But I was nodding my head the entire time. Such great advice. And we're getting into some of these other questions about specifically mentorship. But do any of y'all want to tell us how you landed your first tech job? Shane.
So I'm a self-taught software developer. So tech job, technically I did electronics circuit board repair was my first real job out of school. I took electronics in school, but programming is something I was always interested in and learned C and C++. Back then you actually bought books and learned it that way before everything on YouTube and the internet. Ended up doing some DBase 3 at the time a little bit, and then got my first real job by responding to an ad in the paper in Fox Pro. So that was many years ago, back in the mid 90s. And then parlayed that into Y2K was coming around the corner, and jobs were plentiful at that point in time.
Yeah, things have definitely changed since then. Anybody else have a story to tell as far as your first tech job? We can always come back for more later. But we've got that mentorship question coming up, and I know Floyd has already said several things along those lines, and Jeff mentioned it also. Any other thoughts from Shane or Mandi, or more from Floyd? Yeah, Floyd, go ahead.
One of the best ways to get connected to people who are potential mentors is you've got to be plugged into the community. You've got to attend the user groups. You've got to get connected. Go to the conferences. People are really, really important to your career. I can't stress this enough. Who you know is very, very important. And even if you can just get little nuggets of mentorship here and there, it's so incredibly valuable. I would also say it's important to make sure that you've got more than one person. So if you've just got that one person that you consider a mentor, that might be a little dangerous, because if they're giving you some bad advice, you don't have anything to weigh it against. So if you're hearing two different things from two different mentors, then you've got some decision making to do, and you're probably going to find what's better for you by hearing multiple different opinions, and especially if those opinions are different.
Definitely. I've heard people talk about their personal board of directors. I think it was Rebecca Hartwig who gave a talk on how to find a mentor. So go check that out if you haven't seen it. Mandi, what are your thoughts on this?
So I've not been a mentor, and I never had one. I think it would have been wonderful, to have somebody to bounce stuff off of. But if I were to go find a mentor right now, I would want to find someone who I am comfortable asking questions. We're kind of in this world where we think we need to know it all, and we don't want to look stupid in front of people, but asking those questions are how you're going to learn. And so finding someone that you trust, that will be honest with you and help you work through those challenges, I think is very important.
Totally agree. Jeff?
To just echo kind of what both of these wonderful advisors have said, it's all about getting out there, and it's oftentimes not even what you know or who you know, but just who remembers you in that moment. When a job comes up or they hear something along the grapevine, they say, oh, I know somebody who was thinking about that sort of thing. So mentors become those people that you seek out, but also the ones that a good mentor is always kind of listening in the room. And when they hear the stopping points or the speed bumps that people are existing within, they'll key into it. So my true advice, and it's not going, I'm trying not to beat a dead horse or sound like I'm selling, but find your closest co-working space. The moment that you are vaccinated and you feel safe to get back out amongst people, what you need to do is surround yourself with people like you. So that those mentors might just be someone that you just turn to a random person and say, hey, I'm having problem with this code or with this language. And that person just seemed like another face in the crowd, and that person will become your mentor. You don't have to always look to trusted friends. Sometimes they just pop out of nowhere.
Great points. And a couple, you mentioned this co-working space. Also, just our meetups going, some of them are at co-working spaces, and sending those in person once we can will be huge, and even just being part of the community in Slack. Shane?
I spent most of my career being the only one doing what I was doing where I worked, and so that made finding a mentor challenging. But I did have an opportunity a few years ago to join a project, kind of a side project I worked on in the evenings, and I learned so much from so many people. And that project was across the country. There were developers, about 30 from all over the United States. And so if you have an opportunity to get involved in some type of a project like that, where you can contribute, even just, a few hours a week or just whatever you can, you'll learn a tremendous amount and likely find somebody that it will be a really good mentor.
Great advice on mentorship. We have a question from Fletch in Twitch. What's your favorite interview question to ask a new dev that's not directly coding related? Anybody have one? Jeff.
So this is a spin on a classic question that everybody hates, but I love asking people, tell me about a time when you overcame what you thought was your biggest challenge and how you did that. Because what it's going to do in that moment is going to tell me, is someone going to be that person that just is going to double down on what they know and refuse to try to learn? Or is it someone that's adaptable? And so many times just that level of adaptability changes someone from a leadership path where they're just going to be the position that they're being hired into versus potentially one to lead other people.
Floyd?
One of my favorites is asking them about a time where they really messed something up. It's really important to know how is somebody going to respond. And of course, you've got to remember, an interview is always stressful. So these questions, like you're just sort of peering through a little bit of murky water to try to understand what does this person really look like, because like they're nervous, they're putting their best foot forward. But if you can pick up on when they answer a question like that with some humility, like here's what I learned, here's what I did to go back and fix the consequences of what I messed up. Here's what I did to make sure it didn't happen again. Those are some really good indicators for somebody that's got the right mindset for a software development career, where you've constantly got to be learning, where the things that you did 6 months ago are probably not the same things that you should be doing now, and that continual growth, continual learning.
Perfect segue to our next question. And you may have already answered it. Those are great points on that interview question. But what advice do you have for those junior developers who are wanting to grow in their career and become considered more mid-level? Floyd?
There are three things that I would say. Number one, you really can't call yourself mid-level unless you've got some reasonably strong competency in at least 2 programming languages. JavaScript probably needs to be one of them, because JavaScript is the lingua franca of the web, and frankly, it's the lingua franca of software development. Advice, the second would be you need to be reading stuff other than blogs. You need to find some good software development books. If you need some recommendations, I'm sure there's going to be some time later on if you're looking for good software development books, because you need something beyond just that tactical skill level of, can I wrangle this particular programming language the way that I want to? And then the third one is, you're going to have to focus on those interpersonal skills. For a mid-level developer, I generally don't put a whole lot of emphasis on that, but definitely if you're looking to go mid-level so that you can get to senior level, start thinking now about those interpersonal skills, about team relationships, about leadership, because these are the things that make the biggest difference. I tell people over and over again, and I probably sound like a broken record to a lot of the people that I work with closely, only about 30% of the success of a software project hinges on the technology. The rest of it is all in the communication and the managing expectations and getting people with different opinions and different ideas and different personalities working together productively. And that stuff is so critical. If I had one big mistake in my career, it was waiting way too late to learn that.
Great points. Shane?
Related to that, I think, is so many of us, whatever our first tool is we learn, we fall in love with that language or that tool, and we would just want to hang on to that forever. And it just doesn't work that way. I can think of, I'm sure everybody on this group can think of tools that they used, and now they're completely out of existence, or at least nobody uses them anymore. So pick a tool, learn it, but understand that language or tool is going to be replaced, and so go learn something else. So learn everything you can, and definitely start going beyond just the how to get this done, and start learning patterns and practices that are the right way to get things done, more on a conceptual level and not just tied to a specific tool.
Absolutely. Jeff?
I wanted to expound on what Floyd had said, to just give a couple of tips for people that maybe interpersonal communication isn't something that they yet value, or it's something that they don't know how to foster. What you need to be doing, and you can start doing this now before you even get your first job, and that is learn how your text-based communication is being read by others. message people, get into communication and conversations with people on places like Slack or messengers, so that people start, or so that you can then see how people start to read how you write. Because so many of us don't have any idea how we come across in text and or in voice. So it is something, it's a skill that you have to just keep hitting on, and you have to keep going out, meeting people, talking to people, and it's going to come out in other people as confidence. And if you can come and start to build that confidence early on in your career, it's only going to set your trajectory at a much higher degree. So you're just going to be shooting to the moon, when honestly you're sitting there with imposter syndrome wondering how you ever got there. But it was literally the confidence that you exuded because you knew how to communicate.
Awesome. Mandi?
Yeah, the fellow panelists may not agree that this is how you get junior to mid, but I think a lot of times the user is forgotten. And, you know, if the user can't use what you're writing, what you're developing, it's not gonna fly. And so, you know, learning how to, I know there's all different ways that this happens in all the companies. Some, you know, I personally don't get with the users too often. I have, you know, somebody tell me what they're looking for or whatever, but really understand and take their, unfortunately it's going to be complaints sometimes, but, you know, take their suggestions and take their comments that something would work better if they do it this way. I learned this the hard way. I was writing, you know, code, and I'm like, well, who would do it that way? But the users did it that way, and I needed to pay attention to that. And it took me a couple of times to figure that out. So that's something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Floyd?
I absolutely echo that. What you said, Mandi. I think it's really easy for programmers to get into this zone of sort of being married to their code, where if anybody criticizes the stuff that they've written, they sort of take it personally, like it's a personal criticism. Remember that feedback is a gift. It's a gift that somebody's giving you. They're taking their time to articulate, here's what's going wrong with my experience with what you're doing, or in a code review, here's what I see in your code that could be a problem. And you've got to receive that as a gift, because they're trying to help you.
This is all really good advice. So now on to the mid-level developer. What tools have you used to further your career growth? Anybody have an answer for that one? Or want to give it some thought while we go to the next one? Because we are definitely not going to get through all these questions. If you think of resources that you want to share, definitely either send them to me and I'll get them out to the group, or post them in Slack in the UG OKC Sharp channel. Floyd?
One of the things that I think has really made a big difference for me, it says tools, but I'm actually gonna sort of go off script a little bit and say mindset, and that is you've got to recognize what are the things that this wrinkled wad of protein between your ears is really, really good at, and what are the things that it's really bad at. And for the latter, let the computer do that stuff. So tedious, rote, mechanical, boring stuff like, say, testing your software, let's let the computer do that. Let's let the computer test all of the paths through your code in an automated fashion, so that you don't have to do that. You as a human, you're much better at making judgment calls and doing, you know, decision making and doing analysis. You're much better at, like, figuring out, okay, what's the most effective way to express this concept to an end user that's not a programmer, and learning how to get yourself into this mindset where I'm going to offload this tedious stuff that I'm probably going to get bored with or make a mistake with onto the computer, so that I can free up my brain to do the stuff that brains are good at. Really makes a big difference in how effective you can be.
Sorry, having some computer issues here. Yeah, great answer. And yeah, mindset tool. Does anybody else have one to add to that? If not, let's talk about how you know when you're ready to be a lead. What makes a good lead? Shane.
I think sometimes the feeling is that you gotta, you know, be the smartest, or you have the best technical solution, And that's not really the case. What makes a good lead is the person that is able to communicate well and help the rest of the team accomplish their part of the team job the best. And so you may have the guy on your team that's technically superior, and if you can leverage his skills and help him be the most successful, then you're ready to start being that lead. So I think that's really, a lot of has been said already about the soft skills, communication, how to talk with people, how to get people to work together, how to take two people on your team and they don't agree, they each have a different approach, and you're able to work them into a single approach. Those are the skills. Once you start to be able to be doing those things, then you're ready to start making a jump to be the lead.
Yeah, great answer. And we're also getting a couple of answers to these questions in the Twitch chat. So as you're watching, feel free to write your own responses also. Jeff?
I would really say that if there's one thing that's going to push you toward being a great leader that you can focus on, it's your ability to give constructive criticism. If you can tell someone that they have messed up or that they need to do something differently and keep them on board and not find a way to browbeat them in what is going to be a very vulnerable moment for them, it's only going to make them respect and appreciate you as a leader that much more. So being able to have those hard conversations and being able to be the leader in those so that the other person feels comfortable and feels like they can trust you when there's something that goes wrong, then they're going to trust you when everything's going right.
Floyd?
It's also important to remember what leadership is and how leadership is different than, say, authority. Like you can operate in leadership without having a title or without having authority over other people. You can be a leader without being a boss. And if you can recognize that, so for instance, if you're that person that's really, really good at being the peacemaker between these two knuckleheads that continue to bicker with one another, that's a really good sign that you're ready to move into a more official leadership capacity. I want to add on to what Jeff said and also drop a book recommendation, because this has been a very transformative book for me in my career. Being able to give constructive criticism is really, really important, and being able to do that well, yes. Also, one of the things that's going to be really, really effective for you as a leader is for you to go and work with the people that are your colleagues and invite their constructive criticism. Go to each person individually, one-on-one, and be like, hey, I want you to tell me if I'm screwing something up. I want you to tell me if there's something that you see that I'm doing that I could tune up and be better at. And I want you to feel safe to just come tell me that. With that, I would say there's a book named Radical Candor by Kim Scott. It is a fantastic book. The subtitle of the book is something like How to Be a Kick-Ass Boss. It is a transformative book. She does an incredible job of sort of putting together a mental framework of how do I interact with people so that mediocrity doesn't slip in like a cancer and just ruin your ability to get work done.
Good answers. I think my network is cooperating. I'm going to turn on my camera and see if that doesn't destroy everything here. So y'all can see me again. We may have answered this question already when we talked about junior developers becoming more mid-level. And all these answers, I think, go toward this question. But is there anything else you want to add as far as advice for either you are sort of considering yourself mid-level, how to take the next step to become more senior? Shane?
All of the advice about the communication skills, I think, is the most important. But the other thing I would add to that, just the mindset of software development. So many of us are project driven. So we have a project, we're trying to get it done. We've got deadlines. And so it's just, we tend to focus too much on how do I get this bit of code done? When you begin to understand that, software is really, hopefully, you plan this to live for 10, 20 years, and the development of it is 1 or 2 years, the focus really needs to be on what does it take to make maintainable code, maintainable software over the lifetime, and not just that hopefully short period of time that you're developing it. And so that mindset, along with, of course, I think even more important are all the soft skills and being able to communicate and truly be somebody that others look up to as a lead is the most important.
Yep, Floyd.
Get familiar with how the work that you do turns into your paycheck, because at the end of the day, somebody somewhere is willing to write the check that pays your salary. And what that has to mean is they think that money that they're spending on your salary is less valuable than the work that you're producing. Because if it wasn't that way, then the company would be losing money and you'd eventually be out of a job. Understand how the dollars flow in, and understand how the software that you build fits into that bigger picture. When you do that, it makes it a whole lot easier for you to have conversations with managers and with directors, and if you need to, with like C-levels of larger companies, because instead of you talking tech, you're talking business, you're talking dollars, and having that connection to when I put my hands on the keyboard and write code, I understand the financial picture of this company that I'm working for, and how the code that I write turns into, money coming in. That's a really important perspective to have, and it will really help you.
That's great. So now for the senior developers, I think I'm going to combine these next two questions. Just generally, what advice do you have for people who are senior? And I got this question, I think from Ryan Bupp. I'm not sure who asked this, but someone asked, does every career in IT end up in management? Like, is that the inevitable future for senior developers or not? So what do you think, Shane?
I'm going to go for that second question. I sure hope not. So many of us, I mean, we love software development. And if that's where you're at and you enjoy each day, then management may not be the best place for you. So, think about who you are, what your personality is, what you really enjoy doing, and focus on that. The dollars are not the most important. Being happy with the work you're doing each day is what you really want out of your job and your career.
Definitely. Floyd?
Being senior absolutely 100% has to mean leadership. You have to be good at leading people, and that means investing in junior developers, helping them level up their skills. That means collaborating effectively and learning how to sort of squash your ego down to let other people do everything they can. I would also say, in our industry, we do have a problem of diversity, equality, and inclusion, and it's really, really important, especially as a senior engineer, to recognize that dynamic and do anything and everything that you can to help dismantle that. In particular, one thing that I've found over and over in my career is that people who are from other countries, women, any kind of underrepresented group, these people often have a really hard time engaging productively in team environments. And as a senior, it's your job to build a relationship with them and help amplify their voices, because they absolutely can contribute just as productively as anybody else. And a lot of times, for whatever reason, it's really, really difficult for them to engage, because there are subtle little things that are really, really hard to pick up, that can sometimes make them feel like their voice is getting silenced, or that their contributions are somehow less valued. And it's really important as a senior developer to make sure that everybody on your team is being heard and everybody's got an opportunity to contribute productively.
Yeah, good answers. Anything else along the lines of advice for senior developers? If not, we'll move on to just generally any level developer. We have a few questions in this category, and one is how to prepare for interviews, and specifically technical interviews. Anybody have some advice you want to share on that? Floyd?
If they give you information about how this interview is going to work, go play with that technology. Don't go in completely green. Don't go in unprepared.
Jeff?
Research the company. I'm not even a technical person. Research the company. Talk to anyone you can on LinkedIn that might already be a part of that company, and figure out going in what that culture looks like, what their values are, and how to integrate yourself in a reasonable and fashionable way, so that when you come in confident.
Great answer. And that reminds me, I'm going to share links to y'all's LinkedIn pages. Mandy, did you have something also?
Yeah, just what Jeff just said, but more on the technical side. You know, almost all of the companies are online nowadays, and a lot of them like to brag about what they've developed and what they're working on. You know, if they don't give you any idea, just go in there and see what you can learn. And you know, if you can bring it up during the interview, that's great that you went out and put the effort out to what they do and how they do it.
Not sure if it's my network or Mandy's or possibly both. I'm not seeing cameras anymore, so it might be me. But it looks like Jeff has something.
Just to hop in right quick to bounce off of that, really come down to in that research for those companies, that's where you're going to be able to create, if you ever have that interview that asks you at the end, what questions do you have? Prepare 2 questions and base those on what you have gotten out of the research that you've done. And honestly, after conducting thousands of interviews over my career, the ones that came at me with a reasonable question were the ones that stuck out in my mind, because they were the ones that actually cared enough to learn about the company and then have a corresponding interest.
Great answers. I think our next, well, I might combine these next two because we're talking about when it's time to look for a new position, and the question between was about burnout. So that might be a separate question, or we might be starting to combine because we're talking about looking for that next position. Like, so if y'all want to say anything about whether you've had burnout or how, and maybe advice you have on dealing with burnout versus finding that as the time to look for a next job. So I'll hand it to Shane.
Yeah, I think we all get burned out. Especially when you've been beating your head against maybe the same type of problem for a long time. I think and often we get, business software that we're probably all writing is not near as fun maybe as what we started with. So I suggest do a side project, do something that is a software development project that is just fun. And that will help you kind of remind yourself about what is fun about software development, if you can make the time for it. And the other thing, as far as just when it's time to move, a lot of it is just, why do we work? Obviously, we have bills to pay and we like to get paid. But also, are you happy? Do you wake up in the morning and it's like, yeah, I'm ready to go to work? And we all are going to have days where we don't feel that way. But are the days where you dread starting your workday more than the days that you are looking forward to your workday? And if they are, it's probably time to look for something different.
Great answer. And Mandy, it looks like you're back. I think, had connection issues with you. So if there's anything else you were trying to say, we might not have caught it. If you want to try to repeat anything you were saying before, feel free. And then, Jeff, it looked like you had an answer to this question too.
When it comes to really trying to mitigate like when that time to leave is, and this might not be just for burnout, but if you always keep your network available, if you keep your LinkedIn updated, if you continue to, make sure that all of your projects that you're working on yourself are up to date, you're going to get headhunted. So honestly, while you don't have to take all those positions, they might get you your next raise. But more than anything, it's going to possibly utilize that feeling that you get when someone wants you and someone recognizes what you're bringing to the table and appreciates that and tries to offer you a job. A lot of times that's going to build that confidence initially, and that's what's going to allow you to kind of push through some of that funk or some of that burnout, because it's like, wow, I am doing a good job, I'm being noticed, and it might kind of flip the switch on when you're feeling negative about yourself or what you're doing.
It's a great answer. Looks like Mandy's back again. She posted in Slack that what she was trying to say was that almost all companies are online. So if they don't give you information about the interview, you can go to their website and research the company, like Jeff also mentioned. Floyd, what do you have?
So I read an article a long, long time ago, and it really resonated with me that burnout is usually a matter of you're doing a lot of stuff that you're not enjoying. So like for me, I love programming. My wife was a little taken aback a week or so ago when I said I'm probably still going to be programming when I'm 80, and it's just something that I love. So if I get to write code all day long, I'm pretty stinking happy. A lot of times when I've felt burnt out, it's been either due to like schedule pressure or something like that, where I'm having to work to the point of exhaustion. That's one. Another element of burnout happens when I'm doing tedious stuff that just doesn't feel like it's worth my time. So if I'm in an environment where I'm spending 60-80% of my time just soliciting buy-in, just trying to get people to say, yeah, this thing that you want to do is actually worth doing. That just drains me. And some people are energized by that. I'm not. So what you've got to do is understand what are the things that drain you and what are the things that fill you up. And if you find that you're in a position where I'm getting burned out because I'm doing all of this stuff that drains me, that's probably a pretty good sign that maybe it could be a time for you to move on. It may also be a sign that there's a skill set that you've got to develop and that you've got to grow. The balance is, like, if every time you get frustrated, you just change jobs, it's really easy to accidentally never grow.
Great answer. So we may have already completely answered this one, but is there anything else you want to add about how you know when it is time to move to another position? Yeah, that might have already been. Okay, Floyd, what do you have?
You've got to ask the question, what's the future where I'm at? Is the future more of the same, or is there a future that that allows me to grow in responsibility, allows me to grow in skill? Also, I mean, and I know for some reason it's like taboo to talk about this. If you're getting underpaid, like, let's find somewhere that you can get paid what you're worth. Now, also with that, sometimes it's easy to accidentally overvalue yourself, and that's why mentorship's important. It's important to give somebody the permission to tell you the truth about how good are you, how talented are you. This is a conversation that's really, really hard if you don't have a good relationship with your manager. If you don't have a good relationship with your manager, where you can't have that conversation, or you're not already having a conversation about what does the future look like, that could be a sign. If you do have a manager where you're checking in every week, every other week, it's good check-ins. You're exchanging, constructive criticism. They're helping you get better. You're helping them get better. I mean, that's a pretty fantastic position to be in. And a good manager is probably going to be one of the best tools that you've got in helping you figure out when it is or isn't time to look for a new position. And if you don't have a good manager, well, a lot of times what they say is people don't quit jobs, they quit managers, they quit bosses.
Yeah, along those lines, we've gotten a couple of comments from Sean and Fletch on Twitch. Sean's question was, how do you ask for a raise when the company doesn't give them annually? And then to that, Fletch said a couple things and asked, well, is asking for a raise the same as walking out? So do y'all have anything to say along those lines? Jeff?
It kind of goes back to what I was saying before, but this is kind of a passive-aggressive way to look at getting a raise. But the best way that you're going to get a raise is if it comes in the way of, you can either keep me and pay me a little bit more, or I'm going to go someplace else where I've already been offered a position. So the passive job search is real, and in tech, it's a necessity. If you're wanting, a lot of the times with larger corporations, they will stick you in a box and let you sit there until you leave. And then when you leave, they suddenly want you back for a different box. You could have been trying to get this promotion for a year, and it never was going to happen until they saw that someone else valued you at that amount. So I would say, if you're preparing to walk yourself out, if you're really having that internal monologue of, all right, do I ask for this raise? I know I'm worth more. I've done the research that Floyd's talking about. And where I am is I'm being underpaid, and there aren't enough fringe benefits or perks with that job, or flexibility or freedom that begins to balance out that lack of money. Then it's time to actually listen when someone comes a calling and let them make that actual offer. And when you get that offer, take that to your boss and say, I really like it here. I like what I do. I like what I'm working on. But in the interest of my own career, why would I pass this up unless you all can match or exceed this. And that becomes a place where you are coming at it with some power in the conversation versus an immediate power imbalance where you are talking to what could be a great boss or one that flips the script on you out of nowhere because you suddenly became a problem.
Yeah, great points. Floyd?
It's important to be cautious about coming to your boss with an offer. You've got to know that relationship, and that's why those interpersonal skills are important. If this is a boss that you don't talk to, but maybe once or twice a year, and you come to them and you say, "Hey, I got an offer from this other company," you're probably going to get shown the door. They're probably going to say, "Okay, fine, bye." But if this is somebody that you're talking to on a regular basis, daily, weekly, and those conversations are real conversations instead of just going through the motions of whatever the status updates are or whatnot, then there's a much greater chance of you and your boss being able to figure something out, especially if it's a hard decision. If you like what you're doing, you just feel underpaid. Coming to them and saying, "Hey, I love what I'm doing. I just feel like I'm not getting paid what I'm worth. Can you do something about this?" That conversation is a whole lot easier to have with a boss that you've got a good relationship with. I would also say it's really, really important. Again, know the financial picture of the company. Understand how this company turns the software that you produce into your paycheck, because it'll help you understand a little bit more about how much difference is there between how much I'm getting paid and how much the company's getting paid for the software that I write.
Yeah, really good answers on that. Mandi posted and said she'd love to learn more about passive job searching either today or maybe in a lightning talk. So if one of y'all on the panel or anyone listening might be interested in talking to us about passive job searching, we would love to hear about it. Our next question is from Floyd. What is your way of weighing out whether a career opportunity is right or not for you? And Floyd, were you going to say something just before that?
Yeah, on the whole passive job search, I think it's absolutely true. I set a rule for myself. I try to do at least 2 interviews a year, or at least I did before I went into independent consulting. One, because I wanted to keep my interview skills sharp, and 2, because I always wanted to be connected to how hireable am I at the level that I believe that I should be at. If I'm not getting offers every year or so and weighing them against where I'm at right now, that's probably a sign that I need to do something. I need to grow. I need to change. I need to acquire a new skill, something.
Yeah, any more thoughts on the passive job search?
I just 100% agree.
Okay. What do y'all have to say about weighing career opportunities? Like when you have one, how do you decide whether this is the right one for you? Shane?
Obviously, we all have bills and we want to get paid, but the culture fit, how enjoyable to you would be the work, and the best way to find that out is if you can talk to somebody that works there. I think you can find more about obviously the interview process. You're putting your best foot forward, and the company's putting their best foot forward. And so what you want to be able to do, if you can, talk to somebody that works there, if you can find them, and find out what that culture really is, and make sure that's fits with what you're interested in.
Floyd?
A lot of it, I think, is number one, you have to be able to ask good questions when you go and do the interview. And you have to remember that the answers you get for those questions, you got to sift them. You can't just take them at face value. One of my favorite questions to ask as a candidate is, what does a typical work week look like? How often do people work overtime? These kinds of questions give you a sense for, like, is this one of those cult of busy kinds of places where if you're not putting in 60, 70 hours a week, that you're going to get frowned upon? Those kinds of questions are good. At understanding, like, what's the level of commitment, because I know a lot of companies, they have this way of, like, oh, we're like a family around here. If you hear that, run. Danger, 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 because families don't work the way companies work, and I'm not going to fire one of my kids because they're not producing. That's one of the key elements. The other thing too is that as your career progresses, you're going to learn, here are the things that I'm really, really good at. Those things that you're really, really good at are opportunities for you to influence an environment. They're opportunities for you to influence a company. So for instance, if you're really, really good at helping teams work well together, and you're coming into this company where it seems like there may be some teamwork issues, this could potentially be a really great opportunity for you to transform how they do things in a very positive way. It might also mean that you're going to come in and you're going to try to do this, and you're going to get really, really frustrated because there's some underlying toxicity there that's going to make it all but impossible for you to be effective. But if you can do a good job of balancing, like, here I'm going to get paid more money, I'm going to have more responsibility, that's great. And also I see this area of like friction or maybe deficiency that this company has that I could actually really help them level up. That's really, really good, because over time you can dip into your skill set and sort of perpetuate growth within that company, because you can say, okay, I've got this strength here, and I can use that throughout the next 6 months, year, 2 years, to really change how this company works in a positive way.
Yep. Jeff?
All right, I was responding to something else in chat over there. I think that for you as an employee, the one thing that you always have to be mindful of, and I might have said it before, I'll say it again, is what is your career path and trajectory. So if you get into a position, you need to know what that position goes into. When you work with a lot of startups and smaller companies, they just have developer or whatever, programmer. No, you need to work with companies that understand the value of multi-tiered levels or lead and some growth pattern and some trajectory, so that you can see where your time at this place is going to be. If they don't have that, then you need to have a mentality where you are constantly refining your abilities so that you are going to move somewhere else. Because if there's no upward trajectory, just sitting there and doggy paddling throughout your 20s, or heaven forbid your 30s, is just going to set you behind in a time when you could really be excelling and finding new challenges.
Yeah, great answers. Floyd?
Just to sort of build on what Jeff said, it's also really, really important as the years go by and as you acquire and develop new skills, expect to find a brand new skill that you didn't realize you were really good at, or didn't realize you had a passion for, and be ready to ride that wave. Be ready to, if you need to make a shift, you've been trying to head towards software architect, but all of a sudden you've been really interested in like test automation or something like that. There's a great path for you there, and there's a lot of work to be done there, a lot of really great, really transformative work to be done there. If you're discovering, rather than coding, I'm actually really enjoying just being an enabler for other people to do a really good job coding. There's something there for you as a growth opportunity, and that needs to be okay. Like it's good to have a plan. It's good to know your career path, but also be prepared for discovering a new passion that you didn't know you had.
Yeah, really great answers. We're getting pretty close to 12:30 here, so just a couple more minutes. Want to thank everyone who has posted questions. Feel free to get another one or two in if you can, and continue this conversation in Slack. I'll also be posting a link to this call if you are able to join us and chat for a little while. Really appreciate all of our panelists, and feel free to stick around or go on to your next thing, whichever works best for your schedule.